Hey everyone, this is Pedro with Cinemilled, here today with the GH5 with a PL mount lens, the nice PL glass, and an actual Misfit Atom matte box. So what we're going to do today is we're going to balance this on the Ronin-S using the Cinemilled Ronin-S counterweight system. And the idea here is, as I'm going to do it, I'm going to go over the system as it's balanced, and I'm going to talk about some of the sort of tricky points. And the intent of this video is not to actually show you how to balance it, like literally. It's really, I'm going to go over a lot of the concepts and some of the tricky points and some of the things you have to watch out for and understand how the weight moves around. And so I hope this really helps you get a better grasp and get more out of your Ronin-S counterweight system. So let's jump into it. All right, so I just wanted to sort of delve deep, a little bit deeper here into the different things that happen with the Ronin-S when it comes to balancing these odd payloads. So the first thing is that the roll motor is in a horrible spot. And so you can't what we normally do is we put the counterweight right underneath the camera, right in line with the camera. And in this case, it would hit the roll motor. So that's not a good solution. So what we had to do is we had to arm it off to the side, because you need to clear the handle, the battery handle and everything. So it needs to be displaced off to the side. So what happens when you do that, of course, is it's going to be heavy in the side of where the counterweight is. So of course, this means you need to counterbalance that with the roll arm counterbalance, and then it'll level off like we did here, right? So we got two on this side, two on this side, and it's perfectly balanced. Now you're gonna ask, well, why can't you just do that by sliding the camera left to right? The problem with the Ronin-S is there is very little movement in all axes, either left to right, up or down, or the only axis where there's actually a good amount of movement is the pan axis. All the other ones, there's very little movement to play with. So, it's the kind of thing that really makes this challenging, is you really don't have that much movement in the gimbal itself to balance these more odd payloads. So the only way to do that is with the system that we created. It is a little bit of an oddball system because, like I said, as you add rear weight via the counterweight bar here, you're also unbalancing it left to right. So as you add rear weight, you also have to add roll weight. Make sense? Sort of, right? So where does it get complicated? It gets complicated with the tilt balance, right? Top and bottom balance. A lot of you guys are familiar. You point the lens up, you let go. It isn't supposed to go anywhere like it's doing here. But what happens is, once again, you have very little adjustment in the Ronin itself, up and down. And so you can see here I have one weight on top and one weight on the bottom. So there's lots of different ways you can use this counterweight arm. So the first most obvious way is just by putting weight on the arm. If you put it on top, you're adding top weight. If you put it on the bottom, you're adding more bottom weight, right? If you take this weight and you move it here, you've just changed your up and down balance. So what happened with me is I had this weight mounted on the top. I was trying to do both weights on the same side of the arm, right? So let's say something like this. Now, what I just did is, even though we're still in balance side to side, you can see now the camera's dropping. And it's not dropping because the fore and aft is off. It's dropping because our tilt balance is off. You see that? Now when I point the lens up, it drops back down, falls backwards, severely off balance. And the reason is we just moved quite a bit of weight 1 or 2 inches higher. So the way you have to think about this this arm mount, for this arm counterweight mount, is besides just giving you front and back balance, it's also giving you an option for top and bottom weight. That has nothing to do with the fine adjustment that you can slide the whole gimbal up and down on the tilt axis, right? This is separate from that. I use that on the Ronin-S as a sort of a fine tuning by sliding it up and down on the tilt arm. The gross adjustment is done by moving the counterweights around. So the other thing you can do with the counterweights is if you're struggling with front to back balance, you can also, instead of sliding the camera back and forth, because the problem with sliding the camera back and forth is that if you have to slide the camera back, the camera is now going to hit the roll motor. And you don't want to slide it forward because now you're even more front heavy, right? So there are a lot of times, here we go, we should be back to balanced. So there are a lot of times where you want to make a front to back adjustment without moving the camera body. And the way to do that is just by moving the weight back and forth on the arm, or as you saw, back and forth on the arm on the top or on the bottom, or you can start to stack weight and add even more weight like that. So it's just something to be very conscious of and have a really strong grasp of, is everything that this arm can do, right? So you can put weight on top, you can put weight on the bottom, and you can also move that weight back and forth. So the reason why we didn't do a slot is, of course, it would move, we want things to be nice and solid, so I prefer to just spin on weight and have it not move. We need to remove variables when we're doing this because there's a lot of things going on. Back here to the roll mount, the roll weight, counterweight mount. It's the same concept. So we have mounting positions on the top, we have mounting positions on the bottom, and we have mounting positions on the side. So normally I like to start out with the weights on the bottom because that's usually where things end up wanting to be. And then I don't have to fight it so much with the weights on the other side. If you add the weight directly to the side of the roll arm, you're also displacing the weight further to the left. So if one of the ways, if you have too much balance here and you've run out of adjustment left to right because maybe the camera is hitting, you're having a clearance issue, and you need a little bit more weight to the right side, then you can actually just mount the weight to the side of the roll arm, and that gives you just like an extra inch of side weight, right? So that's another thing to consider. Once again, you're quickly understanding why I call this very much a professional counterweight kit, because you really have to understand what you're doing, because you can quickly start adding weight and just be completely out of balance and completely lost. So you really have to keep track of where your weights are and what they're doing for you. So like I said, when I started off this balancing exercise, I had both of these weights on top. I had them stacked together. And then I realized, okay, I need to move a little bit of this weight forward so I can slide. I needed to slide the camera forward because it was hitting back here because I needed to do flashlight mode. So by sliding the camera forward, I needed more back weight. And if I stacked both of the weights on top of each other, I would have too much up and down. It would be too much top weight, and I reached my maximum adjustment on the tilt arm. So by putting one weight on the bottom, one weight on top, I was able to achieve the fore and aft counterweight I needed, as well as having the tilt arm just in the right position to get this balance just like the way I have. So how did I find all of that out? Trial and error, and really understanding where I needed to put the weights. So I'm going to keep reiterating this because most of your problems are going to come from not understanding what you just did by putting a weight in a certain position, or not understanding what you can do to counteract what you just did. Because there's a lot of times you need to put a weight here, and then you need to counteract that by putting a weight in another position, which then gives you the freedom to adjust the camera up and down. See what I mean? So one thing affects the other thing that affects the other thing. So if you need to follow me here, if you need to adjust the tilt arm, because you needing clearance somewhere like I did, I had the top of the camera was hitting the roll motor. So I needed to slide the camera forward. And when I did that, I created a problem. And I solved that problem by moving the weights right where I needed them to get the tilt balance in a position where it actually got the top of the camera away from the roll motor. So once again, this is where you need to be really in tune with what you can do with the system. And when you do that thing, what are your options if you need to counteract what you just did, so that you can then open up an adjustment where you need it to be, you need it to go. I would generally say that starting off, you always want to slide the camera as far back as you can. That's an obvious thing, because we have basically what we're doing is we're adding a lot of front weight. So just move the camera as far as it'll go until the body of the camera clears everything it needs to clear. As you can see here, I got full clearance, right? Nothing's hitting. And now I'm purely balancing by moving counterweight around or by slightly moving the arms. Because one of the things you'll find is once you start loading up counterweight, if you need to move one of these arms, there is no worm gear like there is on the Ronin-2. This is the big advantage of the Ronin-2, is there's a worm drive adjustment. And so when there's a lot of weight on there, things will bind when there's a lot of weight. So if you have a circle or a shaft, or in this case it's kind of a square shape, and you're sliding something in, if you put weight on here, you see what's happening is it doesn't want to move at that point because it's bound. It's breaking itself. So you have to be conscious of that, because this is why on the Ronin-2 they added those little adjusters that move things back and forth for you very finely. Because once again, we're working with neutral balance. And when you're dealing with neutral balance, 1 millimeter has an effect. If you're trying to get this so where you take your hands off and it doesn't move, this is a perfectly neutrally balanced camera payload. So when you're in that situation, every millimeter makes a difference. And so if you're trying to adjust the actual axis, like the pan arm adjustment here with the little kip handle on the Ronin-2, what you're going to find is you're going to loosen the knob right here, and you're going to try to move it, and it's not going to want to move, right? And you got to understand that's because you got all this weight, and on the Ronin-S here, it's cantilevered off to the side. There's no double arms. There's no fork, right? Like there is on a Ronin-M and a Ronin-2, for example. It's just off of one arm. So everything's trying to twist that arm as it is. So this makes moving things very difficult. So you just have to understand that. And if you're at the point where you have to move one of these adjustments and you're not being able to, I've encountered this problem. What you have to do is you have to ask an assistant to take some of the weight off of one side, and then all of a sudden you'll find it's going to move on you. And of course, what's going to happen, we already know, it's going to move more than a millimeter, and you're going to go past where you need it to be. And so I try to use both hands and try to guide it and nudge it into place. I'm going to tell you right now, it's really hard to achieve a perfect neutral balance like I did here. This did not take me 5 minutes. It didn't take me 10 minutes. It probably took me about half an hour to 40 minutes to get this just perfect, where I can point straight up and the camera stays there. There's a little bit of movement, but I mean, it's pretty perfect. So it takes a lot of trial and error, and it takes understanding what the weights are doing. So let's get into sort of phase 2 of this, which is you're getting 2 of these counterweight arms, right? As you can see here, we have one mounted on the bottom. There will be situations, and we're going to get into the EVA 1 balance next, where you will have to have the top arm mounted on here, and you're going to want the weight right here, right? You might be in a situation where you're going to want the weight up top, as high up as you can get it. Depends. Like the red one, the lens, the center of the lens where all the weight is is actually way displaced at the top. It's like 4 inches from the bottom of the camera. So putting the counterweight arms on the top allows you to put the weight in from the top to make it really top heavy, which is probably not what you want to do, but also allows you to get it from the bottom, which then puts the weight sort of in the center of the mass, which can help. And then the other adjustment you have is you have 2 positions for the counterweight arms. You can put it on the left or you can put it on the right. And then you can angle them out. So there are situations where you're going to want to fan this out with either side. So the bottom line is I've given you as much options for moving weight around that I actually encountered that I needed in certain situations. There is no magical formula. I can't put up a chart saying if you have this lens and you have this camera, put the arm on the top with the weight on the bottom and then take a 1-inch weight and put it over here. That's not going to happen. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of weights in front of you. You're going to have our counterweight system, and you're going to have to really understand what's going on and figure out where you're going to need to put the weight to get your payload balance. I really hope that you guys can get this system, get it balanced, and do things with it that only I've been able to do, and I've been able to see 1 or 2 other people do and achieve some amazing shots, because the Ronin-S is very unique and it does let you do some very cool things that you really can't do with any other gimbal. But I will say at this point in the video that there's no point in trying to put some ginormous setup on here if you really don't have a reason to do it. Because what you're going to see, for example, when I put the EVO 1 on here, is you're going to end up having to put so much counterweight. I mean, I've even used an XL counterweight on one of these Ronin-S setups. And so you're going to put so much counterweight that you're kind of defeating the purpose. So you can take the same build, and I've done this, and put it on a Ronin-M, which is still a small gimbal, and pretty much only had to use like 2 counterweights instead of like a pound, instead of multiple counterweights to make that same build work on the Ronin-S. So there is a point of diminishing returns. That's what I'm getting at. You know, you can quickly reach a point where you're putting so much counterweight on here that now, even though the Ronin-S is a stronger motors, now what you have is you're having so much extra weight that the stronger motors don't make a difference because, you know, they're having to deal with more weight. So you might as well have less weight, counterweight, on the Ronin-M, and you'll have a better performing gimbal than if you have a Ronin-S fully loaded up with counterweight. I want to sell you counterweight systems, but I also kind of want to warn you that this is not an easy balancing job. So anyways, I hope you got a deeper understanding about how, when you move the weight from one position to the next position, how it dynamically affects everything that's going on. The one thing I didn't cover is the pan counterweight mount. So the main advantage of the pan counterweight mount, like I pointed out in the beginning of the video, one is as you add weight to the pan axis, it will shorten the length of the pan arm. And so this can have some performance advantages. It reduces the amount of the lever arm acting on the pan motor. So if you're having a hard time with the pan motor overshooting, that can help you. Even though you're adding weight, that can help you. But mainly the main reason is, like I pointed out at the beginning of the video, is for you to do the 360 roll effect. And if you're doing the 360 roll and the camera is not nodal to the rotation, the lens center is going to be doing this, right? So what you want to do is put the camera where it needs to go so that the lens is just spinning around itself. So it's perfectly nodal, as we say. And then counterbalance and get it to that point balanced by using counterweight. So that's the main purpose of the pan counterweight. All right, guys. Well, I hope that gave you a much better understanding on how to balance a sort of cinema style GH5 on your Ronin-S. You know, GH5 is a really amazing little camera. you know, very much like the A7. Once you put a PL mount on it, you can do all sorts of interesting things like the anamorphic glass. There's an anamorphic mode on this sensor, and so there's a lot of good reasons where you would have a very big sort of front heavy setup and you have a Ronin-S and you want to make that work. So hopefully with the Cinemilled counterweight system for the Ronin-S, you'll get there. You know, if you still have questions or if you're having problems with your build, definitely join the Cinemilled users group on Facebook. And if I can't answer on there right away, there's always a lot of other users that might be able to help you out. Of course, follow us on Instagram. That's where we got all the latest product releases. But most importantly, we post a lot of your guys' content that you let us share with other users. So you might see a build on there that very similar to what you're trying to do and might help you out. So there's a lot of good content on Instagram. And of course, you know, don't forget to visit our website and sign up for our newsletter at cinemilled.com. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys get this working and you get paid so you can buy more of our stuff. All right, guys, I'll see you on set.